From the CISO Series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
Semiconductor giant says its IT supplier was attacked. CISA issues warning for cardiac device system vulnerability, and Japan's busiest shipping port is hit with ransomware. These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have been bringing to you on this week's cybersecurity headlines. And now we'll get a chance for some insight, opinion, and most certainly some expertise on these stories and more from our returning guest, Hadas Cassorla, the CISO at M1. Hadas, thank you so much for coming back. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
All right. Well, before we move on, we have to thank our sponsor for today's /next, Better Protection, Lower Cost. Remember, you can join us on YouTube Live. To do so, go to CISOSeries.com. It is a URL on the World Wide Web. Hit the events drop down and look for the cybersecurity headlines week in review image. You can count it. It's the third one down. We don't move it so we can be consistent. Just click on it to join us. We've got about 20 minutes, though, so let's jump right in. First up here, semiconductor giant says IT supplier was attacked and Lockbit makes related claims. The Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, for those that like to keep it casual, said last week that Kinmax, one of its IT hardware suppliers, experienced a security incident that caused an information leak. TSMC made the statement after the Lockbit ransomware group claimed it attacked the company in a posting on its leak site on Thursday. A TSMC spokesperson would not specifically address the Lockbit posting, but said the attack caused a leak of information pertinent to server initial setup and configuration. TSMC is considered the world's most valuable semiconductor company. They make everybody's chips with a 2021 annual revenue of more than $57 billion. So, Hadas, the tension here, of course, has to do with the impact that interruptions like this to computer components have everywhere across national economies to businesses. I'm curious, what does your spidey sense tell you about the predominance of this company or perhaps its nationality?
Yeah, that's the first thing that actually got my attention is, Lockbit is Russian based and Russia and China are getting kind of chummy, and China's got its eyes set on Taiwan, and there's a lot of international politics going on there. And so this is something that's making me keep my eyes on it from that perspective, from the international affairs intrigue perspective. Just now when you're rereading this, it also strikes me that it's a leak of information. Like, I love how we're measuring the size of these security incidents through like dripping water, right? It's like, this is a leak of information. This is a river.
Yeah, it wasn't a torrent, but it was more than a dribble. So
Yeah,
we need to, the metaphor is there. I mean, it is interesting because it's very easy for water to get everywhere. Like water wants to get out. I think data is kind of the same way.
I do always say that data wants out. I mean, data is entropic. I think the thing that I'm going to keep my eyes on this about is definitely the international aspect of it, and also to see if maybe they need a plumber.
Yeah. Yeah, we have definitely seen, China start limiting rare earth metal exports in kind of retaliation for some of the chip sanctions. So I'm sure if, as this is part of many countries' international playbooks now, just for, the course of business, definitely see if there's more updates on this as we go. Lockbit certainly keeping busy. Next up here, CISA issues a warning for cardiac device system vulnerability. The warning identifies a device from the medical technology giant Medtronic, which carries a critical CVSS score of 9.8 and affects the company's PaceArt Optima software that runs on a healthcare organization's Windows server. The application stores and retrieves cardiac device data from programmers and remote monitoring systems from all major cardiac device manufacturers to aid in standards workflows. Medtronic says in an advisory that if exploited, the vulnerability allows attackers to delete, steal, or modify data from a cardiac device. Attackers can also use the device's issue to penetrate into a healthcare organization's network. It's effectively an endpoint there. Hadas, one security expert we saw quoted out there, Christopher Warner from GuidePoint, was saying that bad actors could use these vulnerabilities to perform remote code execution to manipulate heart analysis data and misdiagnose a patient's cardiac health. kind of like talk about dystopian chilling concept here. I'm curious what's your take on this.
Yeah, the dystopian novel writes itself here, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's one of those things with all IoT and with all the stuff that we're putting, this kind of enablement into it. It always reminds me of Michael Crichton, and it's like Jurassic Park. We're so preoccupied with whether we could do it, we didn't stop to think about whether we should. And I know that there are benefits to having technology, obviously, in medical devices, and I get it, but I don't know. It's just like the thought of what could be done with this kind of
Yeah, like you think about ransomware and that whole idea of even just withholding diagnosis, not even saying interrupting operations of these devices, but like it totally changes the stakes.
Well, but
Like
it's a cardiac device.
Yeah.
I mean, they should hire nefarious people to help them when they're just doing product design. Like, how would you use this to really harm somebody? And it's like, oh, I would find out who's on the cardiac devices, and I would, maybe have some sort of say over global stuff. It's like, I don't know. To me, this is, and of course, and everybody's still excited over Neuralink. So it's like, I don't know.
So you're saying the FDA needs a red team?
Yes, but also I feel like red teams are even still later in the process. It's even like people should really consider, like, if everybody always has these grand ideas of what the stuff they're going to be doing is, how it's going to improve the world, and how this will be great, but there's always a downside, and it's like, well, how bad is the downside, and what do we need to do to at least limit it? And yes, threat modeling for IoT exactly is what we need.
All right, well, our next story here, Japan's busiest shipping port hit with ransomware. The port of Nagoya is Japan's busiest port, accounting for about 10% of the country's total trade volume. It's a big deal then that it suffered a ransomware attack on July 4th that impacted the Nagoya Port Unified Terminal System, or NUTS. This affected operations, canceling the loading and unloading of shipped containers onto trailers. I didn't write this headline as Japan's busiest port hit in
the nuts.
Well, I was going to say it's Nagoya Port Unified Terminal System, but if you wanted to go there, Hadas, you're more than welcome to. But this has been identified as another Lockbit attack, and the outage mostly impacted Toyota's shipping and receiving of parts through the port. Although both the port and Toyota kind of have contingencies in place for these kind of events or disruptions, the attack highlights the leverage that cyber criminals have when their actions impact massive companies like Toyota. Hadas, what are we to make of this?
It's nuts. I almost couldn't get through this article just because it's so funny that their acronym is nuts. Honestly, when I did read it, they got their port back up within 24 hours and functioning again. And ports are, as we saw in the States during COVID, super important for international trade. They resumed operations really quickly. So yes, they were hit. Yes, it's bad, but I think that they did really well. They should. I don't think we need to go nuts over this article.
All right, next story here. 33 U.S. hospitals hit by ransomware this year. At least 19 U.S. healthcare organizations have been breached by ransomware organizations so far this year, and that's according to analysis by the company Emsisoft. Those 19 providers operate 33 hospitals, and at least 16 of those 19 had data exfiltrated. The Emsisoft report is careful to underscore the potential magnifying effect of an HCO or HCO partner being compromised, describing the attack on Common Spirit Health last year, which operates more than 140 hospitals. The report seems to mirror the stories that we've discussed. Obviously, Lockbit is keeping busy, but instead of highlighting third-party vendor risk, we've talked about that in the show quite a bit. I think it also reveals the potential weakness of kind of overarching management organizations like this. Hadas, what is your takeaway from this?
I don't know. Stories like this kind of annoy me.
Okay.
Here's why. I have no idea what happened. They were breached by ransomware. This is like a police blotter. Who cares? Like, did they have MDR in place? Did they have NDR in place? Did they have privileged access management? How were they compromised? Like, this is like, at this point, there's not enough information in this story to be more than just, hey, another person got hit by ransomware, or another company got hit by ransomware. It doesn't give us any information as practitioners about what's working and what's not working. We know in general, hospitals are a big target. And I don't know, I'm kind of sick of the fact that we're not delving deeper into this so that we get more information, so that it stops just being compromise FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Everybody's getting compromised. It's like, what didn't they do? And therefore, can we all learn from this as to either how the attack was executed, what they did have in place didn't work, etc.
Yeah, that's a really great point. It's no longer novel to say that a ransomware attack occurred. It's like, what's the takeaway that we can help the industry that we know is vulnerable, and maybe what best practices can we make sure that we're all checking to to increase the barrier to entry for these types of things, for sure.
And I know that, that like, oh, this is huge in 19 healthcare organizations. And that is important to all of us because we all have to use healthcare organizations. But I just don't, eventually it's going to be like, oh, a criminal's gone through and breaking into houses. It's like, which houses? How can I protect myself? Like, we need more information.
All right, well, before we move on to our next story, we have to spend a moment and give a word to our sponsor, SlashNext. SlashNext, a leader in SaaS-based integrated cloud messaging security across email, web, and mobile, has the industry's first artificial intelligence solution, Human AI, that uses generative AI to defend against advanced business email compromise, or BEC, supply chain attacks, executive impersonation, and financial fraud. Request a demo today at slashnext.com. All right, a UK law could allow for real-time internet logs. A UK government inquiry into online fraud in the country found that it costs society at least £4.7 billion each year, but that less than 8% of reported fraud crimes end up actually being investigated. It deemed the level of policing focus not up to the scale and complexity of modern fraud. To combat this, the government began considering a new law that would empower its GCHQ intelligence agency to monitor logs of domestic internet traffic in real time to identify and disrupt fraud. So, Hadas, a simple question. Do you think it's worth it given the scope of fraud to empower an agency like that?
So I did a little bit of math on this one. And in 2022, the UK GDP was 2.23 trillion. And so this is 0.2% of their GDP. And what they are doing is basically super invasive on all of their nationals. And so I personally am super opposed to this. I do know, however, from friends and people who are in the industry, who are in the UK, they are a lot more tolerant of government reaching in and helping, as they say. I don't think here that this would go down well. This to me would be hugely invasive of the Fourth Amendment, and I just don't think that it's something that we would approve of in the States. But I also just don't think it's worth it from a price wise.
Well, and then also, I mean, on top of that, there's also the technical considerations of like how just the implementation, like let alone the powers to do that. I agree with you. Like from an American privacy perspective, like the hair on the back of my head just kind of goes up. But yeah, like just the technical, the infrastructure needed to do that to be in any way effective. I don't even know how you even begin to do that.
Well, and then they're like, their investigators, they say, aren't up to understanding how to police this anyway. And so we're going to put in more technology. That also doesn't really strike as a good fit for solving this to me, unless they're bringing in a bunch of more technical investigators, which that's not what this says. It just says now we need to monitor domestic internet traffic.
All right. Well, our next one, a continuing coverage on kind of the MoveIt related breaches here, and Shell confirms that a MoveIt related breach after a ransomware leaked data from it. The energy giant Shell has confirmed that personal information belonging to employees has been compromised as a result of the recent MoveIt transfer attack. In a brief statement issued on Wednesday, Shell finally confirmed being hit by the MoveIt hack, clarifying that the MFT software was used by a small number of Shell employees and customers. And breaking today, kind of to show that the MoveIt exposure isn't going to get any better anytime soon. Its owner, Progress, just disclosed a new critical SQL injection vulnerability that could allow an unauthenticated attacker to gain unauthorized access to the MoveIt transfer database. Shell is, of course, far from the only high-profile company to have been impacted by this or just by managed file transfer utility vulnerabilities in recent years. But I'm curious, Hadas, what do you think of the use of the term such as a small number of Shell employees and customers? You know, we kind of know you just need one kind of crack in the dam to get into an organization, and small for an energy company is at a different scale, perhaps, than for a lot of other organizations. I guess my question is it appropriate for companies of this size to maybe downplay the potential impacts of events like this?
I mean, I really think they missed an opportunity to say that it was a gas leak.
Ah. Stay on brand, even with your vulnerability disclosures. Where is your brand?
Right. I don't know. Like, I feel like we're all kind of in breach fatigue anyway, with these giant companies talking about these breaches. And, I kind of wonder, do we have any privacy and security anymore anyway, with our personal data? And, this is my opportunity to tell everybody who's listening, and any of your friends, tell all of your friends to freeze your credit, so that you can at least protect yourself to some extent. But I also, I think the other thing that you mentioned, that this was, obviously found to be a SQL injection. And I just think I kind of blame OWASP. Like, it's a shame that they haven't listed SQL injections in their top 10.
Yeah.
That's sarcasm. It's like this is not an unexpected event with SQL. And so it just, Lissai.
All right, our next story here. Silent Bob campaign, cloud native environments under attack. Cybersecurity researchers have unearthed an attack infrastructure that's being used as part of a potentially massive campaign against cloud native environments. Cloud security firm Aqua stated that although in early stages of testing and deployment, it consists of an aggressive cloud worm designed to deploy on exposed Jupyter Lab and Docker APIs to deploy Tsunami ransomware. Just a quick question for you, Hadas. Is this story just one of many cloud vulnerability issues, or do you see kind of more of a danger here for this specifically?
I think that this is just proof that we need to continue doing security hygiene. This is, yes, it's just another story of cloud vulnerability, but it's also, hey, if you are doing, in the article, it states that the way that this works is launching a program to scan for misconfigured servers. That is part of security hygiene, is to stay on top of your configs and make sure that there's automation, alerting, and auditing. And if you're not doing that, you're not really doing security in your environment. And so, on the one hand, yes, it is just another cloud security vulnerability. On the other hand, it's a good reminder to get your house in order and get just the basic security stuff set up in your environment, and don't set it and forget it. Set it and automate it, alert on it, and audit it.
Oh, weird. Security is just not like a fixed thing that you achieve and then you can just walk away from. That's it's amazing that
I'm
mindset.
so glad I was here to help you learn something today.
It's knowledge every day. The more you know. Star. We'll insert that graphic in post. Before we move on to our last story of the day, just wanted to thank all of the people commenting on our live stream on YouTube. Big shout out to Ed Covert, who had some great bon mots. I enjoyed his a threat model for IoT. Who'd have thunk it? And again, it's we're breaking new concepts here on the Week in Review show. So thanks for watching and thanks for chatting. I really appreciate it. Our last story here: fileless attack surge as cyber criminals evade cloud security defenses. The number of fileless or memory-based attacks that exploit existing software, applications, and protocols has surged 1,400% in the last year. This is again coming from Aqua Security and their 2023 Cloud Native Threat Report. One of the most successful techniques is headcrab. We are hitting all the great names today, where an advanced threat actor uses custom-made malware that is undetectable by agentless or traditional antivirus technologies. That's at least according to the report. Aqua found evidence that headcrab has taken control of at least 1,200 Redis servers, some of them belonging to security companies. Hadas Aqua stated that such evasive attack techniques highlight the importance of agent-based runtime security. Of course, I'm assuming Aqua is not neutral. It doesn't have a neutral position there. But I'm curious, what should CISOs take from this report and the story?
The first thing I took away is I want to get more information, which is kind of my response to every single story. I want more information instead of, it feels like they're all written in FUD. So the increase by surging 1,400% in the last year, as compared to all other attacks, is that average? Is that more than the rest? Are these successful, or are these just the attacks have surged by 1,400%, or is the success of them surging by 1,400%? So in that vein, I'm guessing Aqua wrote this specifically to remind people to use runtime security, but also don't just do runtime security. You also need privileged access management. You have to make sure that people who have privileged access aren't running in privileged access all the time. That can get you head crabs. I also, if I can plug for somebody else, George Finney's book, Well Aware, is fantastic. It really talks about how to make your people in your environment skeptical of the emails they get and the links that they click on. And that is how fileless attacks work. And so I really think that read Well Aware if you haven't. You want good security education in your environment. Give that book to your people. It's fantastic.
We will definitely put a link for that in our show notes, so be sure to look for that when you're listening to this podcast. Well, thank you so much, Hadas, for your time, for your expertise. This was awesome. I'm curious, where can people find you on the cyberspace if they're so inclined?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can always reach out to me there.
Well, thank you so much, Hadas Cassorla, the CISO at M1. Truly, truly a wonderful to have you back, and we will have to have you back again. Yes.
I have one more thing to say.
Let's
always learn. This is because of the Nuts article. Always learn more on network detection. That's almond. I wrote that while we were talking.
That is, I need more legume and or nut acronyms for security. Please send them our way. Leave a comment on the blog post for this show.
Let's try to get as many nut acronyms that have to do with security as possible.
Well, thank you also to our sponsor, /Next, better protection, lower cost. Also, thanks to all of our commenters today. We had a few more kind of coming in throughout the show. We always like to highlight those, so let's keep the chat going every week. Can't always get everyone up on the screen, but we really appreciate your time watching and being here. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Week in Review show, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. I will be here. In the meantime, you can get your daily news fix through cybersecurity headlines. Every single day, give us about 6 minutes. We'll get you all caught up. Until the next time we meet, I'm Rich Stroffolino, reminding you to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOSeries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.